Hi everyone, welcome to S&S Bioinfo. Today's topic is human respiratory system. Human body consists of various organ systems. Respiratory system is one of such important systems in the human body. It takes up oxygen and expels carbon dioxide. You know, oxygen is required for producing energy. That energy is utilized for various life activities in the human body. Respiratory system consists of all the organs involved in breathing. It has mainly two parts, the upper respiratory tract and the lower respiratory tract. The first one is the upper respiratory tract. First one, upper respiratory tract. It consists of number one, nostrils, 2 nasal chamber, 3 pharynx, and 4 larynx. The second part is the lower respiratory tract. Second part, lower respiratory tract. It has the following part. Number 1, trachea. 2, bronchi. Bronchus is the singular form, bronchi plural form. Bronchi. 3, bronchioles, and 4, alveoli. These are the organs involved in breathing. Let's learn about the structure of human respiratory system in detail. The first organ is a nose. Our nose has 2 nostrils, a pair of nostrils. That leads to a chamber called nasal chamber or nasal cavity. A nasal septum separates the right and left nasal chamber. That leads to the nasopharynx, then to the pharynx. Pharynx is the common passage for food and air. This pharynx leads to the next part called larynx. Larynx is also known as voice box or sound box, which produces sound. The larynx is continued as a pipe that is called trachea or windpipe. The trachea is protected by C-shaped cartilaginous rings. It prevents the trachea from collapse. This trachea is divided into 2 primary bronchi, the right and left bronchi. Those bronchi enter into the lungs. See this, each bronchus divides into fine tubules, primary, secondary, tertiary bronchioles. These bronchioles end with the minute sac-like structures, air-filled sac-like structures called alveoli. Here you can see many round-shaped or sac-like structures. Here, that blood vessels in between the bronchioles, then alveoli. So here the bronchi, bronchioles, then alveoli along with the blood capillaries constitute our lungs. Our lungs are placed inside the rib cage in the thoracic chamber. Our body has 2 chambers, the upper thoracic chamber and the lower abdominal chamber. These 2 chambers are separated by a dome-shaped diaphragm. Our lungs are delicate organs, very thin, so that they are placed inside the rib cage. Our rib cage is formed by the fusion of the chest bone, the backbone and 12 pairs of ribs. Now let's learn more about the lungs and its morphology and anatomy. That means the external features and the internal features. The lung is extended. The right lung and the left lung, we have a pair of lungs. The shape, first of all, the shape of the lungs. The lungs have somewhat conical in shape. The upper end is rounded and the bottom is concave. They rest on the convex surface of the diaphragm. It is somewhat spongy in nature. It is pinkish white in appearance. Why is it pinkish in color? Because of the blood capillaries. The alveoli are richly supplied with minute blood capillaries in the lungs. As the alveoli are filled with air, the lungs are spongy in nature. The lungs are protected by double-layered structure. Here you can see pleura. This pleural membrane consists of pleural fluid. It protects the lungs from the external shocks and injuries. Then here, let's understand that lungs are the most important organs of the human respiratory system. Next, let's understand the function of each part of the respiratory system. First of all, nostrils. Nostrils lead to nasal chamber or nasal cavity. The nasal chamber consists of minute hairs and mucus. Mucus is secreted by mucus gland. This mucus has a pretty important job inside the nasal chamber. It keeps the lining of the nasal chamber moist and keeps the air warmed inside the nasal chamber. Then the air moves to the pharynx. The pharynx is an airtight chamber. It's a common passage for food and air. The pharynx leads to both esophagus or food pipe and to the trachea or windpipe. The pharynx leads to larynx. The larynx is also known as voice box. There is a flap of cartilage at the entrance of the larynx that is called epiglottis. Epiglottis. This epiglottis directs the air towards the lungs through the trachea. The next one is trachea. Trachea is also known as windpipe. This is trachea. It's also known as windpipe. The trachea is protected by C-shaped cartilaginous rings. Cartilage is a strong and flexible tissue. This cartilaginous ring gives shape and stability to trachea, and also it protects the trachea from collapse. This trachea gets into the chest cavity and divides as right and left bronchus. The right bronchus, this is the left bronchus. Each bronchus enters the lungs and divides to bronchiole. This is bronchus. Bronchus also supported by cartilaginous ring. It divides into fine branches called the bronchioles. Here you can see bronchioles, minute branches. It divides as primary, secondary and tertiary bronchioles. Each bronchiole terminates with the sac-like structures called alveoli. Here you can see the sac-like structure alveoli. It holds air in it so that our lungs are spongy in nature. At the same time, the alveoli are richly supplied with the blood capillaries so that the lungs are pinkish white in color due to the presence of blood capillaries in between the alveoli. Then our lungs are protected by a double membranous structure called pleura. The pleura consists of pleural fluid which protects the lungs from the external shocks and injuries. And the lungs are protected or located inside the rib cage. You know what is a rib cage just before I told you. This is the internal structure or anatomy of our lungs. Next, when we study about the morphology, the external features of our lungs, our right lung is somewhat larger than the left lung because externally the right lung has 3 lobes while the left lung has 2 lobes only. It is smaller than the right one as it has to accommodate the heart near to it. The heart is somewhat located here. That's why the left lung is smaller than the right lung. Next, let's understand the function of human respiratory system. Respiration involves mainly 5 steps. First of all, breathing. First one, breathing. Second one, gaseous exchange at alveoli. Gaseous exchange at alveoli. Transport of oxygen or gases. Transport of gases. Transport of gases. Fourth one, again gaseous exchange at a tissue site. Gaseous exchange at tissues. Fifth one, utilization of oxygen. Utilization of oxygen. These are the 5 steps involved in respiration. Our respiratory system has 2 main parts, the conducting part and the exchanging part. The conducting part consists of nostrils, nasal chamber, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles. All those are parts of the conducting part. The next one, the exchanging part. It consists of alveoli and blood capillaries. Then what is the role of conducting part? It conducts or directs the air towards the lungs for gaseous exchange. So we breathe in through the nostrils. That air is passed through the nasal chamber, then to the pharynx. It is passed through the larynx, then to the trachea, then goes to the respective bronchus, then goes to the bronchioles, and they are filled in the alveoli that are present in the lungs. That's about the conducting part. Then gaseous exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide take place at the alveolar site. The air of the alveoli and the blood in the blood capillaries. The gaseous exchange take place in between the air of the alveoli and the blood in the blood capillaries. The alveoli are sac-like structure. It increases the surface area for maximum exchange of gases in the lungs. Next, let's learn how does exchange of gases take place at the alveolar region. Gaseous exchange take place alveoli at first. Now let's look at that. Here I draw one alveolus and one blood capillary. You know that alveoli are richly supplied with the blood capillaries. The alveoli consists of higher amount of oxygen, more amount of oxygen and less amount of carbon dioxide. Anyway, when we breathe in, that is a mixture of gases. The air is a mixture of gases that consists of more oxygen than carbon dioxide. So that the alveolar air also consists of high amount of oxygen and less amount of carbon dioxide. Here in the blood capillary, the blood consists of more carbon dioxide, high amount of carbon dioxide and less amount of oxygen. So what would happen here? Diffusion of these gases take place in between the alveolar air and the blood in the blood capillary. So here the concentration is different. So you know, diffusion is the process of movement of particles from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. Here what happens? As oxygen is less in the blood, it moves from the higher region to the lower region. That means the oxygen diffuses into the blood, while the carbon dioxide diffuses into the alveoli. So here gaseous exchange take place. Exchange of oxygen into the blood, exchange of carbon dioxide into the alveoli. So that the carbon dioxide is released out at the time of exhalation. The third step in the respiration is transportation of oxygen. Here, after the exchange of gases, the oxygen is transported with the help of circulatory system through our blood. You know, blood is a red colored connective tissue, fluid connective tissue. The respiratory pigment is hemoglobin. Do you know what is hemoglobin? It's a red colored pigment that is present in the blood. This hemoglobin combines us with the oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin. Oxyhemoglobin. Hemoglobin combines with the oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin. So, after the formation of oxyhemoglobin, here I write oxyhemoglobin. This oxyhemoglobin is transported through the blood vessels and is reached to the various cells of the body. Suppose these are tissues or cells. These are reached to the tissues. Then again the fourth step takes place here. Gaseous exchange at the tissue site. In the tissues, the amount of carbon dioxide is high, while the amount of oxygen is less. So what would happen here? This oxyhemoglobin reaches at the tissue and the oxygen will be dissociated from the hemoglobin. Then this oxygen is diffused into the cells because the cells contains less amount of oxygen, so that the oxygen moves from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. At the same time, what happens? The carbon dioxide will be eliminated out. Carbon dioxide will be eliminated out. So this carbon dioxide again go to the lungs and what happens? It is expelled through the alveoli. So here air in, then air out. See, the carbon dioxide is expelled out from the alveoli. Once again I'll explain. So after the exchange of gases, the oxygen is combined with the respiratory pigment called hemoglobin. Then it forms as oxyhemoglobin. This oxyhemoglobin is transported through the blood vessels and is reached at every cell of the body. In the cell, the amount of carbon dioxide is higher than that of the amount of oxygen. So that what would happen? Oxygen will be diffused into the cells. Carbon dioxide is diffused out. That carbon dioxide is again transported with the help of blood. Same pigment, hemoglobin here. Hemoglobin. Then it is reached at the alveolar site and it is exchanged here and it is expelled out. That happens at the time of respiration. Did you get it? Here we need to think about one important fact about hemoglobin, the respiratory pigment. Why this is used for transportation of these gases in the body? Because this diffusion pressure is insufficient. Diffusion pressure at the alveoli is insufficient to transport oxygen to all parts of the body in higher animals like human beings. So that we have an alternative system in the body, that is the respiratory pigment, hemoglobin. Hemoglobin helps in the transportation of both oxygen and carbon dioxide in our body. Here, carbon dioxide is more soluble than oxygen in the blood. You know, the blood has the water content. The plasma consists of water. So, more amount of carbon dioxide can be dissolved into blood. So that major part of the carbon dioxide in the body is transported as bicarbonates, while oxygen is transported as oxyhemoglobin. I hope you understood the topic well, the structure and function of human respiratory system, the steps that are involved in respiration, breathing, exchange of gases at alveoli, transport of gases through the blood, again exchange of gases at tissue, and finally utilization of oxygen. Thank you and have nice moments.